Hello class. Today we're going to do a lecture over photosynthesis using this diagram. And so today I'm going to just be talking to you a little bit about it and this lovely picture. Question in the front.
That picture sucks.
You have a comment too?
I don't get it. Can I read?
Not really. Hello class. Today we're going to do a lecture over photosynthesis using this diagram. And so today I'm going to just be talking to you a little bit about it and this lovely picture. Question in the front.
That picture sucks.
You have a comment too?
I don't get it. Can I read?
Not really.
Alright. My name is Kelsey Fitzpatrick. Shit, that's not my name. Let's do this again. We'll just edit it out. Just edit it out. Just okay. Do you know what you're gonna say? Ooh, no. My name is Catherine Fitzpatrick, and we have visual aids. And our main question is: will having a visual aid make or break? Alright. Use a picture. It's worth 1,000 words. Arthur Brisbane once said this. I have 3 points I want to talk to you guys about. The first point is how do pictures and diagrams help the speaker connect with people's emotions? The second point is what makes a good or bad visual aid and how much of an effect it will have on your audience's memory. The third is why should a speaker care if he or she can emotionally connect with the audience? The first point we're going to talk about, I got an article called The Power of Visual Communication by Mike Parkinson. And the first thing he wanted to talk to us all about was emotional visual creatures and how that connects to us. All throughout time since humans were made, we made pictures instead of words. If you think back in time when we first saw the first stories, way before any books were made or narratives, we had pictures and we would tell stories through them, and they're called hieroglyphics. Humans are very visual creatures, and we respond better to that. Have you ever, I don't know if you guys have an Instagram or a Facebook, but as you scroll through Instagram, you look for the ones that have the most detail and the ones that tell a story better than the caption does. And you can connect more with that person who posted it than ever before. When I was little, I had this book called If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. And I used to have my mom read it so many times that she just one day couldn't read it anymore. And she said, why don't you try to read it yourself? You should have it memorized by now. So I would sit down on my couch and I would continue to just look at the pictures and make up the words as I went along, based on what the pictures would tell me. And that's how I basically taught myself how to read. So now that we've talked about how pictures can connect the audience and the speaker together, let's talk about what makes a good visual aid, bad visual aid, and how that can relate to your memory. As you look up at the slide, you're going to see a girl in a tractor. I should probably give you a little backstory to it. It probably looks a little weird. So this is Amber, and girls are not, I shouldn't say just girls, student workers are not allowed to use huge machinery because we are a bit clumsy. And today I'm not really sure what made our boss change her mind, but she got to ride this huge tractor. She doesn't know I took this picture, because they didn't want to ruin her face at all or make her tell me not to do it. She still has the plastic on the chair, and she's picking up mold. You don't see it, but she is. If you look closely at her face, she's just filled with joy and excitement. This is what I would call a good visual aid, because you can see what she's doing. You can see how happy she is. And you can see the little details that make this photo unique. The next photo that's going to be on your slide is a picture of my friend Chris. This is an example of a bad visual aid because you have no idea what was going on before them. You just see a guy holding up a rake and covered with leaves that don't look raked at all. So this photo might look confusing because why is he holding a rake with unraked leaves? What actually really happened before I actually took this picture was that we found a snake and we were trying to kill it with this rake. When we had killed it, he holds up this rake and tells me he wants to be a professional leaf raker. And I had to take a picture of it because he just looked so pleased with himself. Again, this is not a good visual aid because you don't get the whole story. There's no little details to look at. He's just posing with a rake. Alright. Now let's talk about, does having visual aids really help your memory? Or is it just a waste of time putting it on your PowerPoints? If you look at the graph that's coming up, you'll see that if I just speak to you without any pictures or anything, you're going to only remember 10% of what I said 3 days later. And say, what if I just put pictures on a slide? I don't say anything, I just keep flipping through pictures. You're going to remember about 35% by 3 days pass. And so now, if I have both, if I'm talking to you like I am right now, with pictures, you're going to remember up to 65% statistically. And I got this from Mike Parkinson from the $1 Billion Graphics. Now that we've talked about what makes a good and bad visual aid and how much of an effect it will have on your audience, let's talk about why a speaker should care if he or she can emotionally connect with their audience. As you look at your screen, you're going to see a quote from Grumpy Cat come up. And as you take a minute to read it, I want you to think about how you would feel if all of your audiences looked at you just as that Grumpy Cat is looking back at the camera. It would suck. You'd put all that effort into making this huge speech for people to change their minds and to agree with you on something, and they don't care. They want you to sit down, be quiet, and move on. So how can you fix that again? Oh, that's right. You put good pictures that can connect with people, and you tell stories and show pictures about those stories. At the very end of your presentation, you want them to question everything they ever thought about the subject that you talked about. You want them to maybe even slightly agree with what you were saying, even if they were absolutely opposed when they first came in. In conclusion, don't make it an average presentation. You want to make it a memorable one. So now that we've talked about emotional visual aid, and it's time to talk about humor.
So I'm one of those people that I really love to Google pickup lines. I mean, it's just something that I enjoy. And so if you Google pickup lines, you'll realize that probably 90% of them, now that's a made-up statistic, but 90% of them are pretty creepy, to be quite honest. And about half of those creepy ones are science-related, which I find really awkward because, why do people just automatically relate science and, oh, creepy. But I mean, I guess it's kind of true because you can picture that, that kid in the back, kind of nerdy. You all know who I'm talking about. Just leaning over and saying to you, if I were a neurotransmitter, I would be dopamine so that I could activate your reward pathway. And to a science kid, that might be kind of normal. Maybe. Others not so much, to normal students. You might just be like, yeah, I'm going to give you a restraining order.
And so transitioning this kind of into visual aids, this is really important for a visual aid. You want to use something that is relatable, because if not, it's either going to just put your audience to sleep. But if it's relatable, then it can really draw them in. And so humor can do that for you, but you have to use an appropriate humor to make your speech unforgettable. So I'm Sarah Baldridge, and I am a current nursing student here at Texas Lutheran, and I've been researching this topic related to humor and the science behind it for about a week and a half now. And so today I'm going to be talking to you about neurotransmitters that are involved in laughter, such as endorphins, serotonin, and dopamine. And I'm going to tell you their functions within the brain. And then after I give you just a little bit of background about that, I'm going to connect it then to visual aids and humor and why these neurotransmitters connect to a visual aid. And so now that I've given you a little bit of a preview, I'm going to explain to you what exactly a neurotransmitter is, because for some of you that might just be a really giant word. So Neurogenics, which is a brain wellness program that specializes in neurotransmitter performance, they said that we would not be able to function at all without them. And so it's basically just a chemical messenger. Think of it just the cells in your brain relaying back and forth and communicating to each other. As simple as that. And so there's three that are very important in laughter that are released when you laugh. And those are going to be endorphins, serotonin, and dopamine. And so Adam Sprouse-Blum, who works in the Department of Surgery and writes for the Hawaii Medical Journal, says that endorphins are really good at giving you that euphoria feeling. And so without them, you wouldn't get that feel good, all over, just happy feeling inside of you. And they're really important in pain management, and they put you at ease. And then the second one, is serotonin. And Alan Frazier, who works in the Department of Pharmacology at UT Health Science Center, says that serotonin is involved in every bodily function. And so you're probably thinking like, okay, that's cool, but what does it actually do? It actually works to regulate your heartbeat, and kind of along with endorphins, it puts you at ease. And it will de-stress you and, again, kind of just give you that relaxed feeling. And then the third one, which is probably the most important one, is going to be dopamine. And so Roy Wise, who is an author for the Nature Neuroscience group, says that dopamine is very important in your focus. Without it, you would not be able to give any kind of attention. You would not be able to channel your thoughts. And so it's important with focus and attention. And then with these, it's important with long-term and short-term memory. And so dopamine kind of lets you recall those memories. Then your brain will use these three to activate your memory. And it's going to want to continue this repetition of this because it sees that your body is just feeling good. And so it's going to use this repetition to continue that reward. And then with this, it's going to just start storing it into your memory. Now that I've given you kind of the boring science facts about, neurotransmitters and what you don't want to hear, let's connect this into a visual aid. So when you're looking at a visual aid that is humorous to you, and it has an image that is humorous, you will laugh and you will draw laughter. And these chemicals that I just described to you are going to be released. Then with this, you will have increased brain activity. You'll be able to make memories and recall memories that have relatable content. And so the first result being increased brain activity. And now it's really hard to find an MRI of a brain that shows activity that's not related to myth. You Google MRI of a brain, you click on an image and it's like MRI, brain meth. And there's all these studies about meth and cocaine, but I finally found one that's for voluntary laughter. And so if you will see in this image, the brain areas have, when these chemicals are released, there are very high areas in your brain that are activated, and there are many areas. And so this just shows the amount of activity that your brain is going through when these chemicals are released. And then with this brain activity, you'll be able to make new memories that will be stored. And so in your high school biology class, you were probably waiting for your teacher to put up those funny slides of what natural selection at its finest. Or maybe how mating a season actually occurs. And you were just waiting for these images, but instead they would put up boring lecture slides that had countless number of words on them, and you would have to sit there and search through and try to find the right word to fill into your outline, and you were just like, oh my God, I don't understand this, and the words were just screaming at you through the page. And so there was actually an experiment done at Valparaiso University College of Nursing, and they wanted to study student engagement. And so what they did was they had two different lectures. There was a lecture that was very boring, that didn't contain, it contained just facts, what I just described to you, those lecture slides. And then there was a lecture that had humorous stories and content that was relatable with the assigned reading. And so that they found then that with the non-humorous lecture, there was 0% of the students were mostly engaged or completely attentive. And 35% had no engagement whatsoever. 50% had occasional engagement, they're kind of in and out. And then 15% were just neutral. They didn't really sway either way. And, you might be kind of asking yourself, like, okay, this studied engagement, and, yes, the humorous slides made the students more engaged, but are they actually retaining this material? And so there was another study done, a pilot study done by James Mantooth at Auburn University, and he studied large public four-year universities, primarily in the Southeast, to study the students' retention rates of the actual material. So they kind of did the same thing where the students would encounter a non-humorous lecture, and then the students would go through a second lecture with humorous content. So the lecture that was not humorous, then when they took a quiz, the mean average of the quiz was they only got about 11 questions out of 20 correct. It was 11.36 was the mean average. And then after they had a humorous lecture, the mean averages of the correct answers went up to about 15 questions correct out of 20, and the mean average was 15.18 correct answers. Then translating this into an actual grade, with a non-humorous lecture, the students were only making about a 56.8% on their quizzes. But after a humorous lecture, the kids had 75.9% for their grade. And so this kind of shows just the retention rates that the students are actually retaining this material better with the humorous lecture. So in conclusion today, I've talked to you about the different neurotransmitters, endorphin, serotonin, and dopamine, and how just the science behind them, their function in the brain, just boring science stuff, and then related it to visual aids. And if you put humor into your visual aids, then this connects And these students are retaining the material, they're more engaged in class. And there's a quote by Victor Borga that says, "Laughter is the shortest distance between two people." And this quote was really interesting to me, and I found that you can really use this to your advantage, and that the audience and the speaker, if they have laughter together, they can really connect on a deeper level. So now that I've told you about humor and visual aids, we're going to transition to the effects of these visual aids.
Now, as I was coming up here, I noticed in the audience that both myself and the audience have something in common, that none of us know what I'm about to say. So first of all, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Elmer Catalan, currently attending TOU, and I've been in this professional speaking class for about 2 weeks now, doing research on the effect of visual aids on the audience. So, the 3 main points of visual effects and how they affect the audience that I'll be talking about today is education, inspiration, and audience diversity. So this education by Dr. Haig, who has a PhD in psychology, conducted a couple information, and he said that largely body of research indicates that visual cues help us better retain better information. And this also could make sense because if you think about it, the brain is more like an image processor than anything else. Now, I don't know if you remember in elementary school when the teacher made you remember all this vocabulary every week, so you get like a set of 10 and you have to remember it and you get to take a quiz. Well, not everyone liked that. Of course, at least I remember I didn't like it because it's a lot of words and we don't like words. In fact, words terrify students. So I would rather much look at pictures than have to memorize words. So let's take, for example, if you think of the actual logos, you don't have to know what the actual name of the logo is, because if you look at the logo, you recognize, oh yeah, this is so-and-so, it's Starbucks. So if you've noticed on Starbucks, they have taken the actual word off that says Starbucks and just left the little mermaid lady on there. And so now when you look at the actual logo, you can see and you can recognize, oh, well, that's Starbucks. So you don't need to, because you know you can retain that since it's a good visual aid. So now moving on to inspiration. This statistics was recovered from the Central Disease Control and Prevention. And this shows the life expectancy of an average male or female. So as you can see, females tend to live around 81 years of age. And therefore males live less as to 76 years of age. But what if you could live longer? What if you could live 116 years old? Just like, as you can see on the screen, Susanna Jones has recorded to be the oldest person living due to Guinness World of Records. She was born in 1899, retired in 1965. She was a housekeeper and child care provider. And she said the secret to her success was lots of sleep. Now, if some of you guys in the audience are college students, you guys know that we probably won't get there. And she also says that she never smoked or drank, so you have to stay healthy. And she claims that she's lost her eyesight and has difficulty hearing. And she had no children, but has a whole stadium of nieces and nephews. She said there are at least over 100 nieces and nephews. Now, how inspirational is this really? Does this really want to make you live 116 or 100 plus years? Does this make you want to sleep more? Maybe since you're sleeping more, you're enjoying your life a little less, therefore you get to see more of the history. So if you think back on Mrs. Jones, you can see all the history that she lived through. It was almost over a decade. Or does this discourage you as you look at the picture. Whenever you get to be this old, you really can't see anymore. You're losing your eyesight. You're losing the ability to hear. You have trouble more moving on your own, so you depend more on other people. And this article was found in today's news. So now that I've talked about inspiration, let's talk about audience diversity. So is there any of you guys that remember being scared of anything as you were a little kid? Maybe you're still scared of it now. It is important to know your audience. Therefore, you don't want to show anything as you're giving a presentation that might trigger a memory to your audience that might make them remember something they don't like or show them something they don't like. You don't want to remind them of their fears. So there's a Salma Hayek video, and it shows a video of her being interviewed, and she has two other people next to her. So as she's sitting in the chair, she notices a snake. And as soon as she sees the snake, she gets off of the chair and starts climbing on top of the person on the right to her. So now, if Salma Hayek was in the audience here with us, it'd be definitely not a good idea to show a picture of a snake, because otherwise she'd run out the room. So like the author Griffin of Invitation to Public Speaking suggested, avoid using visual aids that might shock, disgust, and or horrify your audience. So now that we've covered education, inspiration, and audience diversity, which can be the three main points of visual aids that can affect the actual audience, like Mr. Forrest Gump said, life is a box of chocolates. You don't know what you're going to get. That could also apply to your audience. You don't know what kind of audience you will go to get. So in this time period, we've covered three main areas of visual aids: emotion, humor, and effects. And if you think of it, next time you use a visual aid, you could target all three areas. And like, again, Mr. Gump said, well, that's all I have to say about that.